Welcome. This is CC2-Series Clinical System Technical Training Part 2. I am Mark Dundas and I will be your host. A little housekeeping before we get started about our technical training. The audience for this technical training is anyone that will be designing or installing the TechWorks CC2 series. We assume a basic understanding of things like what a nurse call is. We don't think we should have to explain what a nurse call or an intercom or any of that type of thing is. We assume you know that. The structure of the training is this particular CC2 series is a 4-part training. So this part is part 2, the parts and pieces. There is a presentation guide handout available online if you'd like to print that out and follow along. And there's also a certification test, which you can fill out and send to us, and we will review it. And if you pass the test, we'll give you a certificate of authorization after you pass all 4 parts. Again, to get certified, you have to pass all 4 parts of this training. So first of all, what we want to confirm is this is not a nurse call. For those that know what a nurse call is, a nurse call is UL 1069 life safety communication. Has a very strict standard as to what it is. That's not what this is. Kind of looks like it, but it's not what it is. So what exactly is a room status? It's about moving patients and staff as efficiently as possible. This is specific to outpatient medicine, and you need an understanding of the way the United States delivers outpatient medicine, because there's 2 pieces to it. There's the diagnostic facilities, and then there's treatment facilities. So this is where clinic call or CC comes in versus a nurse call or our NC series product. CC is strictly a staff-to-staff communication. There is not a life safety component in the design of the hardware. There are things that are unique to managing a clinic, like patient arrival, doctor follow, where is my staff, where's my doctor, and next patient, where do I go next? If I'm a doctor and I'm trying to see as many patients per day, I need to know where to go. If I'm an X-ray technician in an orthopedic clinic, I need to know where to go. So let's talk about the hardware. There are 2 kinds of hardware. There's a passive and a smart station. The difference is that a passive station doesn't have a brain. It has no address. It has no identity other than what it's hooked to, which has to be a smart station in this system. Smart systems have a built-in brain, meaning they got a CPU. They have a network address, so they can communicate over the TechWorks network. The TechWorks network is a 2 twisted pair wiring from device to the next device. It's a big loop, but it can be a T or an X or however that wire comes together. We don't care which way you run it. It doesn't have to be a loop, but it has to be 2 twisted pair. There is no central controller, and passive stations have to connect to a smart station to do anything. A passive station is nothing but a button and a light, typically. So let's talk about the smart stations. What's available? You have a CC2-DL44B, which is a 4-color dome light in bright colors. You have a CC2-DL44BT, looks the same hardware, no difference, but the T on the end means it has a tone. We also use this same exact hardware, but we run different firmware on it to create the CC2-ZL or zone light 4-color with tone. CC2-RS4B, that is a room status station, 4-color, bright colors. CC2-RS4P is the same thing, but with pastel colors. For those applications where you don't necessarily want the buttons and lights we just talked about, we also make a 4 input-output control module called the CC2-CM4. This is for hooking up passive devices and sending them to a 4-point annunciator. So you got 4 little stations out there doing something, and you got a mini annunciator, and that's all there is to the system. It's not meant for large system designs. It's meant to solve that one-off weirdo thing of a refrigerator in a morgue where somebody might get locked on the wrong side of a door. It's for strange things like patient arrival systems that are not ever standardized. Highly customizable. That same hardware that's used in the CC2-AN4NT is also used in the CC2-DS-BT, which is our duty station. Basically, it's a annunciator with a tone that's running zone light firmware, just like the zone light up here. It's functioning as a zone light. So it's a station that represents a group of other stations. The CC2-AN84BT is our standard, been here for 20, 30 years, 8-column by 4-color annunciator, bright colors. We also make a companion for the pastel colors, which is 8 columns, 4 colors, pastel. We also make the CC2-MC16T, which is a 16-button and light control station. So we'll talk more about all these in detail. Let's talk about the dome light. CC2-DL44B. This is the creme de la creme. It's got everything built in. You can get it with or without a tone and with dome light firmware or zone light firmware. Same hardware, 4 colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. 4 inputs, 1 per light with LED output. So you got a screw terminal on the back. We'll talk about in the next section how you wire these up. But you can get at every one of these light elements to have it light by a separate screw terminal if you want to. CC2-DL44B is no tone. As I said, 4 in, 4 out, no tone. The BT is the same thing, but tone added. And the CC2-ZL4BT is zone functionality. So the dip switches, rather than identifying this, again, we'll talk about the dip switches and programming this network in part 4. But right now, just understand that the dip switches assign this device as a ZL to a group of DL44s. So if you got a group of DL44s down a hallway, a ZL can represent all of that hallway functionality. The CC2-ZL4BT does not have any inputs. It is an output device only. There are no screw terminal inputs on the back for contact closure monitoring. If you want inputs, you have to use the 44BT versus the ZL4, which is 4 outputs for zone annunciation only. The CC2 RS4B and RS4P are simply 4-color buttons that activate 4-color dome lights or 4-color annunciators. The B version is red, yellow, green, and blue. The P version is pink, ice blue, white, and purple. Built-in functionality of these stations. Over the years, we've come across a lot of different ways that people want these implemented. So what we did is we built in option switches in these that allow the installer to choose what's going to happen when you push a button. So one of the options is that first push on any one of the 4 buttons turns on a steady light. So if I push the yellow button the first time, it turns on a steady light. Push it again, it goes to fast flashing. If you push it a third time, it goes off. Another one of the options is on-off, just on-off, not a 3-stage signaling, but just I push the button, it turns the light on, I turn the button off. That can be either on steady off or on flashing off, depending on how you set the dip switches. Another one that we found is a lot of people want this system The bottom three buttons, especially on the bright color station, they want the red to be an emergency call, and they want these other three to be room status. So these three represent staff. Yellow might be an X-ray technician, green might be a doctor, and blue might be a nurse. But the red has to function differently. It's a staff assist. So what we do is by, again, setting the dip switches for the options, you have the first push of the red button is fast flashing and second push is off, where these are on steady, flashing, and off, or three state, all on the same station. So there's several options. There's actually 4 options built into every station. Let's talk about the control module. This thing is probably the most overworked and misunderstood of our product line. It has 4 contact closure inputs right here across the top. These contact closures, again, depending on how you set the dip switches, can either be a normally open or a normally closed contact, and they can be either maintained or momentary contacts. What's that mean? That means that if you hook up a button to one of these contact closure inputs, you can have it be a push on, push off, which is momentary, or it can be a Form C contact, meaning that it closes and causes an alarm, or it's closed most of the time and it opens and causes an alarm. So all that functionality is all built in. There are 4 LED drivers, one associated with each input, so you can drive a dome light or a call confirmation light out there in the field. This terminal over here on the upper right of the control module is a zone or common opto-isolated alarm output. What does that mean? It means that it's on an isolated ground that gives an isolated closure that can interface with someone else's equipment. Let's say it's a dialer. We've had people that whenever a pull station is pulled, they want to hit a dialer and go send a signal to a central monitoring station. Fine. That's what that contact closure does. You can also light a common zone light out in a corridor. Real simple. It's just non-off switch, but it's isolated if you want it isolated. Current limited output. What does that mean? Well, the current limited output on the LEDs, there's actually a built-in electronic circuit breaker in here so that if the technician hooks the wires up backwards in the field, which I know you would never do, but it happens all the time, the wires get crossed on installation, and this unit will go into a shutdown mode. When that happens, see this little light down here? That's your power indicator light. That light will turn red. If it's green, you're ready to go. If it's red, it means that you've got a short on your field wiring. Pull your wires off until the light turns green, and then go figure out why that wire is shorted. Could be swapped between switch and LED, could be the LEDs hooked up backwards. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, that light will tell you, and it won't hurt the module. Built-in functionality, again, a lot like the RS4, we got a lot of functionality built right in. You select it with these dip switches right here in the middle. The first push can be flash, and the second push off with a momentary closure. That's the default. If everything is off on the dip switches, it will function that way. Push me once, I'm on, push me again, I go off. If you want, you can have first push on flashing or first push on steady. That's the other thing. You can do that with any of our stations. The other thing is switch input number 1 sometimes is used to monitor a maintained either normally open or normally closed contact. That can be a smoke detector somewhere, or it can be a door contact. Very common application is monitor a door contact. And if you got a normally open closure, you put the dip switches one way. If you got a normally closed door contact, you put it the other. When that door opens or closes, whichever you want, it will send an alarm out the network connector, which is right here. This is where you hook up to tell other devices what's going on, or it will send a contact closure out this alarm output. So lots of options on this little module. You can get really creative. On the AN4NT and DSBT, these are both the annunciator version of this hardware, I guess you'd say. So they're addressable. They have a built-in tone. They have 4 lights and they are addressable, but they have no buttons. No buttons. They both have the same functionality. The difference is this one is zone functionality, where this is individual station functionality. So this would represent like a control module, where this would represent a group of stations or a group of addresses on the network. Let's talk about our annunciator family. The CC2-AN84, 8 columns, 4 colors, available in bright or pastel. The B stands for bright colors, red, yellow, green, and blue. The P stands for pastel colors, pink, ice blue, white, and purple. The T, as always in a TechWorks product, stands for tone. Both of these have a built-in tone. We'll talk more about the tone options in the next 2 sections, but especially part 4, where we talk about programming. Network addressable to 8 stations. So each column of these annunciators represents one of our 4-button or 4-light or 4 IO control module inputs. System functionality. Built into every one of these stations is the functionality of doing a simple doctor follow. So this panel, with nothing else, just this panel sitting on the network, can keep track of these yellow lights, let's say, and which one was pushed first, second, third, fourth. We'll talk more about that as well. You can also set tone by row in this family of product. Again, this is one of those differentiators between nurse call and clinic call. In a nurse call, you want every light to tone. In a clinic, you don't. You might just want the red to have a tone and the other colors no tone. What we used to call our old quiet firmware in the older version of this product. Let's talk about the CC2-MC16CT. 16-button master control panel or console, multi-button functions. Again, it's just like the CC2-RS4, but imagine 4 of them in a column. This is like 4 RS4s. And it can control 4 dome lights, individual segments. So this could be the red segment, the yellow segment, the green segment, the blue segment of a DL44, or it can control 4 CC2 CM4 control modules, meaning this could be one control module, column 2 could be another control module, column 3 could be another control module, column 4 could be a 4th control module. That would give you 16 inputs and outputs to do something else, whatever you want to do with them. Control up to 4 devices remotely. That would be your CC2-CM4. Built-in tone. Why would you want a tone on this? Because if you got something going on out in the field like a control module, this becomes an annunciator as well. And again, you can turn that tone on and off. You can set how it functions, but you might want to know that a refrigerator door got shut somewhere. Okay, now let's talk about passive stations. CC2-DL1RT. It's a single color red dome light with tone. This comes in white, or you can get a red-white 2-color that is no tone. We have the ability to make a 2-color in this with tone, but it is so unpopular that we only build it on custom request. But we do take custom requests. CC2 EPS is an emergency pull station. Again, this becomes confusing because it looks like it becomes a nurse call. It doesn't. This is not for areas that are code compliant life safety. It's for areas that somebody feels better about putting a pull station, but that doesn't make it a nurse call. The same thing with the bed station. There are reasons why, for patient convenience, they might want a call cord and a bed station somewhere. And I'll give you an example. Chemotherapy. It may not be a code requirement that a chemotherapy patient have a call button. Some places it is. So you got to be aware of this. If it's not, then you can give a patient a call cord. Let's say they got to sit somewhere for a long period of time for some reason, and they need to let somebody know, hey, I got to go to the bathroom or I need a new bottle of water. That's why you might want to add a patient station to a diagnostic medicine system. But again, it doesn't make it a nurse call. Just by having a call cord doesn't make it a nurse call. We also make a variety of passive stations. The one says call on it, one says help on it, and the other is just a remote cancel station. Now, why in the world would you want a cancel only station? Well, we've seen doctors want a patient station on the ceiling. I am not kidding you. Put a patient station on the ceiling, drop a call cord down so that they can reach it. Well, how are you going to cancel the call? If the patient station is on the ceiling, you can't reach it. So we make this cancel station. I'll tell you another place where they like some of this remote cancel capability is in nurse training facilities. They like the ability of this product to look like a nurse call to train nurses, but then the teachers in the back room have panels where they can turn calls on and off and light lights, and they can also remote cancel things to confuse the students and see how they react so that they learn to follow protocol and procedures. Let's talk in detail about these three lights. They are all the same. The difference is just the color. And like I said, the DL2RW is just a passive dome light. It's literally a light bulb. It's an LED, but behind two elements, red and white, and there is no tone. However, as I said, if you do need a two color with tone for some custom job, we can add tone to this station. The pull stations and other passive stations, they all have an integral call confirmation light behind the cancel button. There's a dedicated cancel button on every station, so you have to physically push one button to call and another to cancel. The EPS has an integral push button, which is in parallel with the pull string. So it's a push or pull to call. The bed station is the same. So that call button, that help button on that patient station is in parallel with that jack. So it can be either a bed station with a call cord, or you can hit the one on the wall, places the same call. It's not two levels of call. The PCS, or push to call station, is just that. It's nothing but a button and the light behind the cancel. Same thing with the help button, just a different sticker over the front of the button. And of course, the cancel only is a remote cancel station, as I described earlier. The power for this system is a standard PS2437B, 24-volt DC output. It's 120, 240-volt AC input, fully regulated, filtered, built-in surge suppression. Wall mounting bracket is included. We include this with every power supply, so it's easy to mount. And you can power up to 30 of the CC2 stations with one power supply. It can be either stations or annunciators, but about 30 is about the number you're going to run out of gas, because this is a 3.7 amp power supply. So at 100 mils per, you're going to be around 3 amps if you have a combination of 30 stations and annunciators. So give yourself a little headroom and keep that 0.7 in your pocket. Let's talk about adding an IMR, just from the standpoint of what else can go with this system. As an accessory, this IMR adds things like pocket page, tablets, text messaging to cell phones, custom text from any button. So it can tell you that the green button or the yellow button was pressed in a room, and that message can go to a dedicated cell phone. So for instance, why would you want to do that? X-ray technicians love this feature because it gives them a list of where they're needed, and it only sends a message to this cell phone when the yellow button is pressed in an orthopedic clinic. So the orthopedic nurse or doctor says, I need an X-ray. They hit the yellow button and it immediately sends a message to the X-ray technician saying, we need you in room 158. And he has a list, and this is his priority stack as to where he needs to go next. You can also change the status from one to another, meaning an emergency versus an exam, just a standard X-ray. But it also can be sent to multiple cell phones. So if you have something like a restroom that you don't just want to go to one person, you can have that particular pull string send a message to several people. Any phone, any carrier, we don't care because we're just sending text messages. Digital signage is built in. So what does that mean? It means that on any browser, you can see what's going on in your clinic. Anything IP can be connected to those buttons and lights we just talked about because the IMR plugs into your network and immediately tablets, PCs, anything on that network becomes a display terminal or an administrative terminal, depending on how you set the user interface. Everything is password controlled inside of the IMR, so not everybody can get at the same controls or the same screen. More tools to help you. We're online 24/7, 365 at www.techworks-usa.com. You'll find brochures, specifications. We're always here to help with design assistance. We encourage you to watch these videos and take the training materials like the systems guides and that type of support information. Sit down, read it, study it before you call us. But we are here. Call us at tech support. We're here to help. Next up is part 3, wiring of the clinic call system.